My name is Dana Ford. I'm 34, and for most of my life I was the daughter who got the leftovers while my sister got everything handed to her on a silver platter. When my grandfather passed, he left me his penthouse in downtown Chicago, the one place that had always felt like home. It was mine alone. No strings, no sharing. My parents secretly made their plan. I knew they were setting a trap for me. Then I pretended to tell them I was going on a 3-week business trip to Europe. 2 days later, they took action, and when they forced the door to my penthouse open, they discovered something. That left them frozen in shock. I still remember the moment I overheard them talking about it. They thought I was out, but I heard every word how they'd wait until I was gone. Call a locksmith, clear out my things, and sell the place to bail my sister out of her money troubles. They had no idea I never left the city. They had no idea I was watching, and they definitely had no idea what was waiting for them inside. This story is one you won't forget, I promise. If this journey resonates with you, if you've ever had to stand up to family pressure or fight for what was rightfully yours, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment with your own story, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Your support means more than you know, and it reminds us all that we're not alone in these battles. The day the keys to the penthouse were handed to me felt surreal. I stood in the lobby of the building in downtown Chicago, the envelope from the lawyer still in my hand, and took the elevator up to the top floor. When the doors opened, the view of Lake Michigan hit me first wide and shimmering under the afternoon sun, stretching out like it had waited for me all these years. The air inside carried that familiar scent of old books and polished wood, the same one that had filled my grandfather's study whenever I visited as a kid. Grandpa Oscar had lived here for decades, and every corner held a piece of him. The living room had floor-to-ceiling windows, a grand piano he rarely played, but loved to dust, and shelves lined with leather-bound novels he read to me during summer stays. I walked slowly through the hallway, running my fingers over the framed photos he kept mostly of me, from awkward school portraits to my college graduation, the one no one else in the family bothered to attend. This place wasn't just an apartment. It was the only spot where I had always been the priority. My grandfather had seen the truth about our family long before I fully understood it. He watched how my father, Wallace Ford, and my mother, Casey Ford, poured everything into my sister Brittany, who was 6 years younger and somehow always the center of their world. From an early age, the favoritism was clear. When Brittany wanted dance lessons at 10, my parents signed her up for the best studio in the city without hesitation. I was 16 then, begging for funds to join the debate club, a small fee compared to private coaching, but my father shook his head, saying money was tight that year. The next week, they surprised Brittany with a new laptop for her art projects, even though she barely used it. I learned to stop asking. My straight-A report cards earned a quick glance from my father before he turned to praise Brittany's finger paintings as if they were masterpieces. My mother would nod along, eyes shining only when talking about Brittany's latest hobby. I buried myself in part-time jobs at the library and tutoring to cover extras they claimed we couldn't afford for me. Grandpa Oscar noticed. He would slip into my room with a slice of pie or invite me downtown for weekends at the penthouse. There, he taught me chess on the old board by the window, telling me to think several moves ahead and never reveal my strategy too soon. He celebrated my small wins, the scholarship I earned on my own, the internship I landed without connections, while my parents were off at Brittany's recitals or exhibitions. He knew they loved the version of themselves they saw in her, the creative, charming one who reflected their dreams. In me, they saw the practical, independent side they didn't want to acknowledge. It scared them, he once whispered, because it reminded them of their own limitations. When I graduated college with honors, working nights to pay tuition, Grandpa Oscar was the only one in the audience. My parents sent a card busy with Brittany's latest gap year adventure in Europe, funded entirely by them. Standing in the penthouse now, I set my bag down in the master bedroom, the quilt he had picked out still on the bed. Every detail felt like proof that someone had truly seen me. The lemon tree he planted on the balcony years ago had grown tall, its branches heavy with fruit even in the cooler Chicago fall. For the first time, I had something solid that couldn't be taken away or redirected to Brittany. It was security in a city where rent devoured half my salary, a space to breathe after years of scraping by. I sat in his reading chair by the window, the city lights starting to flicker on below, and let the quiet settle around me. This wasn't just property, it was validation, a roof chosen for me without conditions. Little did I know how quickly my parents would try to change that. One evening, I stopped by my parents' house unannounced. I had a box of old photos from the penthouse with me, figuring they might want to add them to the family album that seemed to revolve around Brittany's life. The doorbell rang once, but no one came, so I let myself in with the spare key they had given me long ago, the one I rarely used anymore. The living room was dim, with the faint glow from the kitchen drawing me closer. Voices drifted out low and intense, as if they were discussing something they didn't want overheard. I paused in the hallway, the box balanced in my arms, and listened. My father's words came first, sharp and deliberate. "We'll do it when Dana heads to Europe for those 3 weeks," he said. "That's enough time to get a locksmith, clear her things out, and get the penthouse on the market. $1 million will wipe out Brittany's credit card debt and set her up with a decent rental in a better part of the city." My mother chimed in, her tone softer but equally resolute. "It's for the best. Brittany's been drowning in those bills from her spending and that vacation she took last spring. Dana has her career. She can find something smaller. We can't watch Brittany struggle like this." The conversation shifted, and my cousin Jenna was mentioned next. My father suggested reaching out to her for help with the moving since she was practical and lived just a short drive away. "Jenna can come and sort through Dana's stuff," he explained. "We'll tell her Brittany's just using the place temporarily so she won't question it." I stood there, the weight of the box suddenly unbearable, my pulse racing in my ears. They spoke as if it was a simple fix, like rearranging furniture, not invading my home, and selling what Grandpa Oscar had explicitly left to me. The plan was clear. Wait for me to be gone, hire a locksmith to break in, remove my possessions, and list the property to fund Brittany's financial holes. Brittany's debt wasn't a surprise. She had always been impulsive with money, racking up charges on clothes and trips while I budgeted every penny. But this was new, my parents turning to theft to bail her out, ignoring the legal boundaries of the will. The shock washed over me in waves, a mix of betrayal and disbelief that made my chest tighten. How could they plot this behind my back, treating my inheritance like family property to redistribute? It wasn't just about the money, it was the complete disregard for Grandpa Oscar's wishes and my right to what he had given me. I backed away silently, slipping out the door before they could discover me. The cool Chicago air hit my face as I hurried to my car, the box forgotten in the trunk. The drive back felt endless traffic crawling along the lakefront, giving me time to process the fragments of what I had heard. By the time I pulled into the garage, the initial numbness had turned to a simmering rage. They assumed I would be halfway across the ocean, oblivious to their scheme. They didn't count on me staying put. I decided in that moment to see if they would follow through. Announcing the trip would be the test, make it sound convincing, let them believe I was gone, and watch what happened. If they called the locksmith and went in, I would have undeniable proof of their intentions. The elevator ride up seemed slower than usual, the lights reflecting off the mirrored walls. I replayed their words again, the casual confidence in their voices. It hurt more than I expected, confirming what I had suspected for years in their eyes. Brittany's needs always came first, no matter the cost to me. But this time, I wouldn't let it slide. I would be prepared, turning their plan against them without a word of warning. The resolve steadied me as I unlocked my door, the quiet of the penthouse, welcoming me like an ally. At the next family gathering, I mentioned my upcoming trip. It was a Sunday dinner at my parents' house, the kind they still hosted regularly, even though Brittany had her own place. The table was set with my mother's usual spread roast chicken mashed potatoes and the green beans Brittany always requested. My father sat at the head carving the meat while my mother passed plates around. Brittany was there chatting about her latest work project, and Jenna had joined us too, bringing a bottle of wine as she often did when invited last minute. I waited until conversation lulled, then brought it up casually over the main course. My company just confirmed a big client meeting in London, I said, keeping my tone light. It's 3 weeks in Europe, flying out next Friday back mid-month. My mother looked up immediately, her fork pausing. 3 weeks? That's a long time. Are you sure you can be away that long? I nodded, helping myself to more potatoes. It's important for the account. They've been pushing for in-person presentations, and this is the window. My father set down the carving knife, wiping his hands. Europe in the fall isn't bad. You'll get some good weather over there. Brittany smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Sounds exciting. You'll have to send pictures. Where exactly are you staying? Hotel near the office district, I replied. Nothing fancy but convenient. Flights are booked, everything set. Jenna raised her glass. To successful trips. Just don't forget about us back here. The conversation shifted to logistics, how I would handle mail plants in the penthouse, the automatic lighting system I had installed. I explained the locks were smart ones controlled by app, and the building security was top-notch. No need for anyone to check in, I added. The system alerts me if anything's off, and the concierge handles packages. My parents exchanged a quick glance, subtle but there. My mother asked about the plants anyway, mentioning how dry the air could get. I brushed it off, saying the timer on the watering system would take care of it. Inside, I watched their reactions closely. My father nodded along, asking about the flight time, while Brittany talked about a friend who had visited Paris recently. Jenna kept the mood light with stories from her own short trips. No one pushed further about access or keys, and I didn't offer any. Dinner wrapped up with dessert, my mother's apple pie, Brittany's favorite. As we cleared the table, my parents hugged me goodbye, wishing me safe travels. Brittany did the same, adding a text later that night about souvenirs. Jenna waved from the driveway, promising to catch up when I returned. I drove home that night with the windows down, the cool Chicago air rushing in. The announcement had gone exactly as planned, casual, believable, no red flags raised. They believed I would be gone soon, across the ocean, out of reach. Instead of packing for Europe, I booked a room at a quiet hotel just a few miles away in the Loop, the kind of place business travelers used for layovers. I paid in advance, requested a late checkout option, and chose a room with a view of the river but no connection to my name in the building records. The next days passed in a blur of work emails and pretended preparations. I forwarded my mail to the hotel, set up auto replies, and even bought a small suitcase to leave visible in the penthouse hallway for the camera to catch. Everything looked normal from the outside. By Thursday, I checked into the hotel, driving there after dark to avoid any chance encounters. The room was simple but comfortable, with a desk where I could monitor the penthouse feeds on my laptop. I settled in, ordering room service and watching the city lights from the window. The wait began. They had 2 days before my flight. Plenty of time to make their move if they were serious. I kept the camera app open, notifications on silent, ready for whatever came next. The quiet of the hotel room gave me space to think about the years leading to this point, but I pushed those thoughts aside. This was about seeing the truth, not dwelling on the past. I slept lightly that night, the hum of traffic below, a familiar Chicago sound, knowing the real test was just beginning. Instead of heading to the airport, I drove to a hotel just a few miles away. The check-in process was quick, the clerk handing me a key card without a second glance. My room overlooked the river, the water dark under the overcast Chicago sky. I set my laptop on the desk connected to the penthouse security system and started making arrangements. First came the cameras. I had researched options weeks earlier, choosing a set that was easy to install and fully legal in Illinois, since it was my own property. I drove back to the penthouse that afternoon, parking in the garage and taking the service elevator to avoid the lobby cameras noticing anything unusual. Inside, the quiet felt different now, charged with anticipation. I placed small devices in the living room hallway and kitchen, discreet ones that blended with the decor and sent live feed to my phone. Testing them took time, adjusting angles to cover entry points and main areas without blind spots. The app allowed audio too, capturing clear sound along with video. I kept the original recording from overhearing my parents, storing it securely on an encrypted drive as backup evidence. By evening, everything was active. I ran a few tests walking through the rooms to ensure motion alerts worked instantly. Satisfied, I locked up and returned to the hotel, the drive short through evening traffic. The next step was harder. I called the non-emergency line for the Chicago Police Department, explaining the situation calmly when an officer picked up. I described the overheard conversation, playing the recording over the phone after getting permission. The officer listened without interrupting, then asked questions about the property ownership and my concerns. I emphasized the plan to hire a locksmith for unauthorized entry, the intent to remove my belongings, and the potential sale without my consent. I offered the live camera feed access through a secure link the system provided for law enforcement, along with timestamps of when I expected activity based on my departure. The officer took it seriously, noting the details and promising to have a unit ready to respond if the alerts triggered. They appreciated the advance notice and evidence, making it a priority watch rather than a cold call. I gave my hotel contact info in case they needed to reach me quickly. Hanging up relief mixed with tension. It felt strange reporting my own family, but the recording left no doubt about their intentions. They weren't just talking. They were organizing it step by step. Back in the hotel room, I ordered dinner from room service and reviewed the feeds again. The penthouse looked empty, lights on timer giving the appearance of occupancy. I thought about the years leading to this, the way small favors for Brittany always grew into larger expectations. Sleep came in fits that night, the city noise filtering through the window. I checked the app several times, ensuring connection stayed strong. The waiting was the hardest part, knowing they could act any moment. Morning brought coffee from the lobby and more monitoring. I worked on actual client files to keep busy, the routine grounding me amid the uncertainty. Every notification ping made my heart jump, but they were false alarms, delivery drivers, or building maintenance. I reviewed the police report number they gave me, ready to reference it if needed. The officer had assured me that with the evidence provided, response would be swift for attempted break-in. The days blurred slightly, the hotel becoming a temporary base. I ventured out for walks along the river path, clearing my head while staying close enough to respond fast. The fall air carried a chill, leaves scattering on the sidewalks. As the departure date approached, I prepared mentally for what might come. The cameras recorded continuously, cloud storage backing everything up. The recording of my parents' conversation stayed ready to share again if required. I knew this step changed everything. There would be no turning back once authorities got involved. But after hearing their plan laid out so plainly, I couldn't let it happen without consequence. The quiet determination grew stronger. They had forced this choice, and I was ready to see it through. 2 days after I was staying in the hotel, the camera alert went off. The notification chimed on my phone while I was reviewing work emails at the desk. I opened the app immediately, the live feed showing the building entrance first, then switching to the hallway camera as motion triggered. A van pulled up outside, marked with a local locksmith service logo. The driver got out, tool bag in hand, and met my parents at the door. My father spoke to him, gesturing toward the lock, while my mother stood nearby, looking around as if checking for witnesses. Brittany arrived next, carrying empty boxes from her car, and Jenna pulled up shortly after, helping unload more supplies. They gathered in the lobby, my father explaining something to the locksmith, who nodded and followed them to the elevator. My heart raced as the hallway camera captured them stepping out on my floor. The locksmith knelt by the door tools clinking as he worked on the smart lock. My parents stood watch my mother holding the boxes, Brittany scrolling her phone, Jenna shifting uncomfortably, but staying silent. The feed showed the door mechanism clicking after several minutes, the locksmith testing the handle until it turned. My father pushed it open first, the group filing in one by one. They spread out quickly, my mother heading to the bedroom, Brittany starting in the living room, pulling books from shelves and stacking them in boxes. Jenna hesitated in the entryway before joining to wrap fragile items from the kitchen. My father pulled out his phone, dialing a number and speaking in a low voice about scheduling a real estate agent for photos the next day. "Yes, it's vacant now," he said. "We can list it this week." I didn't wait another second. My hands shook as I dialed the police number I had saved the officer from before answering on the second ring. I described what was happening live, the feed shared in real time through the link I had provided earlier. "They're inside with a locksmith they hired," I said, breaking in to remove my belongings. The officer confirmed a unit was en route, already close because of the prior alert. I watched the screen, the group moving efficiently, Brittany folding clothes from drawers into bags, Jenna packing kitchenware with quick motions. My mother directed from the bedroom, pointing out items to box. Minutes felt like hours. The locksmith finished resetting the lock from inside, testing it again before stepping back. My father thanked him, handing over payment, the man leaving with a nod. Then the elevator dinged in the hallway feed. 2 officers appeared, badges visible, approaching the open door. They knocked firmly, announcing themselves as Chicago police. The camera inside captured the moment perfectly. My father turned first, face paling as the officers stepped in. "We have a report of unauthorized entry," one said. "Step back and identify yourselves." My mother dropped a box, contents spilling on the floor. Brittany froze with a sweater in her hands, eyes wide. Jenna backed against the wall, mouth open in shock. The officers asked for ID, explaining the owner had reported a potential break-in and provided live evidence. My father tried to speak, claiming family access, but the recording I shared cut him off. The conversation about hiring the locksmith played clearly. They separated the group for questions. The locksmith called back up as witness. The officers documented the scene, photographing boxes and disturbed items. My parents argued it was a misunderstanding, but the evidence stacked against them. The hired locksmith packed belongings, real estate call on speaker. Brittany started crying, Jenna looking pale and silent. The officers issued citations for criminal trespass, explaining the seriousness given the forced entry and intent to dispose of property. I watched it all from the hotel room, the feed steady, my breathing shallow. The shock on their faces when realizing they were caught was profound. My father silent for once, my mother covering her face. The officers wrapped up, warning them to leave immediately and not return without permission. The group filed out, boxes left behind, the locksmith shaking his head as he followed. The door closed behind them, the penthouse quiet again. I sat back, the adrenaline fading into a heavy exhaustion. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back. News of the police report spread quickly through our Chicago circles. The building's resident app buzzed with notifications that evening, neighbors posting anonymously about a break-in attempt at the penthouse level. Someone had seen the locksmith van and police cars, and word traveled fast in a community where privacy was prized, but gossip thrived. By morning, messages appeared on Nextdoor speculating about family disputes and warning others to check their locks. I stayed in the hotel, monitoring from afar as the story grew. Friends from work texted asking if everything was okay after hearing rumors. I kept responses short, saying it was a misunderstanding being handled legally. The impact hit Brittany hardest. Her company, a mid-sized marketing firm in the Loop, had a strict policy on personal conduct affecting the brand. Whispers started in her office, colleagues seeing the public report linked to her name, questioning her judgment. Her manager called her in for a meeting, expressing concern about client perception. Within a week, they let her go, citing restructuring but making it clear the incident played a role. My parents reacted with fury, at first calling my phone repeatedly until I blocked their numbers temporarily. They hired a lawyer, filing a civil suit to contest the will, claiming Grandpa Oscar had been influenced or lacked capacity when signing. The paperwork arrived at my hotel demanding I appear for deposition. I consulted my own attorney, the one who had handled the estate probate. She reviewed the documents and shook her head during our meeting at a quiet cafe downtown. The will was ironclad, notarized, witnessed by medical professionals confirming his sound mind, no ambiguity in language, leaving the penthouse to me alone. Court dates came and went over the following weeks. My parents' lawyer pushed for discovery, requesting financial records and family statements, but evidence supported the will's validity. Jenna provided a deposition, admitting she had been asked to help move items but hadn't known about the locksmith or sale plan. Her testimony weakened their case further. The judge ruled swiftly in preliminary hearings, dismissing claims of undue influence for lack of proof. Costs mounted for my parents' legal fees, adding up to $10,000 they hadn't anticipated. The public nature of the filing only fueled more online discussion, neighbors and distant acquaintances weighing in on social media. Brittany struggled to find new work, her resume tainted by the association. She moved back with my parents temporarily, the financial help they planned now reversed. My father stopped his usual community events, my mother avoiding social gatherings where questions might arise. One afternoon, a message came from Jenna. She apologized for getting involved, explaining she had believed it was temporary borrowing for Brittany's benefit. She wrote that seeing the police changed everything for her, making her realize how far things had gone. She asked if we could talk, hoping to make amends. I read it several times in the hotel room, the city traffic humming below. The words were sincere, but the hurt ran deep. I replied politely, thanking her for the apology but saying I needed space and wasn't ready to reconnect. It wasn't harsh, just firm, the boundary I had to set. The lawsuit dragged a bit longer, but the outcome was inevitable. The final hearing confirmed the will's enforcement, ordering my parents to pay court costs on top of their own expenses. No appeal followed. The evidence was too strong. The fallout settled into a new normal. Conversations in our extended family circles shifted, some relatives distancing themselves from my parents. Brittany focused on rebuilding quietly, taking freelance gigs while living at home. I extended the hotel stay briefly, giving time for the dust to settle before returning to the penthouse. The locks had been changed again. Security upgraded. The incident left marks, but it also closed a chapter. The distance grew, not just physical, but emotional. The trust shattered beyond repair. The months that followed brought a silence I never expected. The calls stopped. The messages dried up. My parents didn't reach out, and Brittany's name no longer appeared on my phone. Jenna's apology text remained unanswered, and eventually even that thread went quiet. The family group chat, once filled with updates about Brittany's life, excluded me entirely without a word. Brittany's job loss hit hard. The marketing firm cited policy on personal conduct impacting company reputation, but everyone knew the police report played a major role. Clients had seen the news snippets, and the association became too risky. She searched for new positions, sending resumes to smaller agencies, but interviews were few. For the first time, she faced the reality of building without the safety net my parents had always provided. My parents dealt with the financial fallout quietly. The legal fees totaled around $10,000, not counting the cost to replace the damaged lock and upgrade security. They sold some investments to cover it, tightening their budget in ways they hadn't experienced before. Social invitations slowed neighbors polite, but distant community events attended less often to avoid awkward questions. The building residents treated me differently too, offering nods of support in the elevator or leaving small notes about admiring my strength. The incident became a cautionary tale whispered in the halls, a reminder of how family matters could spill into public view. I moved back into the penthouse after the hotel stay, the space feeling larger and more peaceful without the constant tension. I rearranged furniture, added plants to the balcony, and turned Grandpa Oscar's old study into a home office. Work continued steadily, clients none the wiser about the personal storm. One weekend, while cleaning out a drawer in the study, I found an envelope tucked behind old files. The handwriting on the front was Grandpa Oscar's my name in his careful script. Inside was a letter I had never seen, dated just months before he passed. He wrote about watching me grow into someone resilient and kind, despite the imbalances at home. He praised the way I handled challenges on my own, earning every achievement through effort. He explained the penthouse was his way of giving me a foundation, a place where I could always feel chosen. "You are enough, Dana," he ended. "You always were. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." I sat in his chair, the letter in my hands, tears coming without warning. The words washed over me, filling a space I hadn't realized was still empty. For years, I had measured myself against the attention Brittany received, wondering what I lacked. Grandpa Oscar saw the truth. He knew my strength came from standing alone when needed. The tears were for the loss of him, for the family I thought I had, and for the relief of finally releasing that weight. I cried quietly, the city lights twinkling outside, until the wave passed. From then on, the silence felt different, not empty, but freeing. No more waiting for approval that would never come. No more justifying my choices. My parents and Brittany faded into the background of my life. Contacts blocked, paths unlikely to cross in a city this size. Jenna's attempt at reconciliation stayed unanswered, a boundary I maintained for my own peace. The penthouse became truly mine, filled with new routines and small joys. I hosted friends for dinners, worked late with the lake view as company, and tended the plants Grandpa Oscar had loved. Looking back, the pain of their actions lingered, but so did the clarity it brought. Family isn't always blood. It's the people who see your worth without conditions. Their choices led to consequences they couldn't escape: financial strain, social isolation, and the realization that favoritism has a cost. Brittany learned to stand on her own. My parents faced the limits of control. For me, the lesson was simpler. I deserved the space Grandpa Oscar gave me, and I no longer needed their validation to claim it. Thank you for listening to the end of my story. If you've ever faced something similar, family pressure, betrayal, or the fight to protect what's yours, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Sharing these experiences reminds us we're not alone. Take care, and see you in the next one.